Dick Cheney knows that there's really no such thing as a moderate. Dick Cheney is one lone voice in the Republican Party. What motivates Dick Cheney? He's not hot for interns. He has all the money he needs. He's not a torture freak. He don't want to run for political office. Dick Cheney is motivated by love for his country.
Wow. Okay, here with us now, former Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, Liz Cheney, who's also the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great to be here.
It's great to see you. And we can talk about your dad, because I hear sometimes people put me in this position where you're here to do just that. A couple of questions, and then we have a little surprise for you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Excellent.
But has the White House reached out to your father? Or has your father reached out to the White House to try and talk, like Condoleezza Rice, like other former top administration officials would do with president administrations, to sort of help behind the scenes and share information and work collectively for the good of the country?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Mika. Actually, before the inauguration, when the Bidens came for a tour of the Vice President's residence, my dad and Vice President Biden talked, and Vice President Biden said he'd like very much to sit down and sort of, you know, hear at length from my dad about sort of the whole range of issues he's been dealing with. My dad said he'd be happy to do that, and then, you know, there was never any follow-up from the Bidens. You know, I think I've been listening to you guys talk about the extent to which this is a public debate and the extent to which my dad's speaking publicly about it. And it occurs to me that nobody is sort of saying, gosh, the Obama administration, you know, needs to keep quiet about the Bush administration. They've been very public in terms of criticizing the vice president, criticizing the former administration. And, you know, it seems to me that, you know, we live in a country where the opposition can be out there speaking as well. It's not just those in power who, you know, are able to state their views publicly.
Well,
these issues matter very much. So.
And it's in a conversation that I think we need to be having. And your father believes that Obama's present policies are putting our nation at risk. Is that at the heart of the matter here?
You know, I think that's very much the heart of the matter, and I think because of that, he feels very strongly that he's got an obligation to speak out. It's not, you know, I know there's this notion of sort of once you've left office, you should be silent, and I would point out that that actually isn't the tradition, and that you've got people like Vice President Al Gore, who's been very vocal in his criticism of you know, future administrations. But my dad feels very strongly that what the current administration is doing is making the country less safe, dismantling the policies that they put in place after 9/11 that were very much focused on what we needed to do to prevent a future attack. You know, it would be the easiest thing in the world for him to sort of go fishing and spend time with his grandkids, but he worries about the world his grandkids are going to inherit.
Well, let's talk about that. We actually have a special guest on the phone for you. Joe Scarborough calling in. He's on assignment on location. Joe, can you hear us?
Yeah, I wasn't going to call in, but I've been watching the program. Of course, I'm on assignment. Willie and I have a very, very important press conference to attend later on. I'm doing some intel on that right now. But I just wanted to say a couple very quick things here. First of all, the White House, when it comes to this issue, is not interested in reaching out. It's very interesting. We just heard a report from the White House saying that the White House doesn't care whether these techniques worked or not. But it's very interesting. The White House yesterday released a document from an auditor, Inspector General, saying, well, you know, waterboarding and these other techniques didn't work. So they will release these documents from lawyers in Washington, D.C., but they have classified CIA documents proving that all of these techniques worked, that we broke up al-Qaeda because of these techniques. They won't release that. And when his own intel chief, Dennis Blair, comes out and says that these enhanced techniques worked and he probably would have done it in 2002, they cherry-pick that information out. And so the press just sits there acting as if, Liz, as if your father is on some other planet for suggesting this. And in part, it's because the White House is cherry-picking the intelligence that they're leaking out. So they will leak evidence that hurts the Bush administration's position and your father's position, but they keep classified the documents that make your father's points.
No, you're exactly right, Joe. It's great to hear you, too. And I think it's an important point, and I think that, you know, the news media has a very critical role to play here in terms of holding the administration's feet to the fire on this. You know, day after day we see Robert Gibbs standing at the podium in the press room. You know, he's always got sort of a cute one-liner, oftentimes about the vice president, but people need to ask, when is the selective release of intelligence going to stop? And, you know, if in fact your claim that the documents the vice president's asked to have released, you know, don't show what he says they show, then, you know, release the documents. I mean, it's really a dishonest game they're playing.
Well, and again, for Democrats to attack the Bush administration for cherry-picking intelligence for the past 8 years, and for Barack Obama's own intel chief to write a memo saying that these techniques worked, and for the White House to censor that and to cherry-pick that, and then take the intel chief to the woodshed the next day for telling the truth is maddening. One other thing, and then I will get off the phone.
No, you can stay on. You're doing great.
No. Listen, let's be very clear. I don't care if Dick Cheney's approval rating is 1% with the American people. Look at every Pew poll. Look at every poll that is out in this issue. Regardless of what his personal lovability factor is with the American people, 50% of the American people have consistently supported the positions Dick Cheney takes when it comes to how we treat terrorists once we have them in custody, on how we should treat classified material. I know 50% disagree with him fervently. That's fine. We just have to say right here, this is not a 19% proposition. Look at Pew polls going back years, and 50% of the American people agree with Dick Cheney and where I stand on this type of information. It's just very frustrating watching how the media treats it, though, Liz. Your father has to be extraordinarily frustrated.
Well, you know, actually, I would say that he feels so strongly about this issue, Joe, and I think you've laid it out very well. But, you know, the idea that it is important that the country be defended, that we put policies in place to defend the country, that this administration, by doing things like releasing the memos that lay out the enhanced interrogation memos, you know, is in fact putting us at greater risk. And he feels so strongly about that. He's very focused on the substance of these issues. And, you know, as you know, doesn't spend a lot of time looking at the polls, but he knows that at the end of the day, it's important for him to be speaking out because of the future of the nation.
Hey, Liz, I'm sorry, really quick. Mr. Trump's just walked in. I'm going to have to get off.
Joe, I'll be there soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
But Liz, one of the